Yo guys, what's going on? My name is HackingIsFreedom and welcome to the 29th episode of What Was Cut, a series where we take a look at what exactly was cut from our favorite games. Today we're going to be talking about NFS ProStreet. I honestly wasn't a big fan of this game when I was a kid. Something about it just didn't feel like Need for Speed to me, but I still played the hell out of it either which way. It may have been because of the drag racing, because I'm not really a huge fan of that style of racing, and to me, drag racing always felt out of place in Need for Speed titles. But I am a big fan of the drift races in this game. The drifting mechanics felt so advanced for the time. Anywho, let's be a pro street racer.
He said it!
And figure out what was cut. Textures are up first, and there's really not a lot left over, but we do have some interesting ones. The first group of textures we're going to be talking about were found in the data for the Infineon track. They all mention cut sponsors in their names, and these were all used as placeholders originally. So this Brembo texture is labeled as Autolite, Edelbrock is labeled as Bank of America, Gretty is labeled as Nationwide, Progressive is labeled as Fram, and BBS is labeled as Pressstone. I'm guessing the developers had plans to add these brands at some point, but just couldn't get the licensing to do so. These three textures were also found in the track data of Infineon, and they don't look like much, but it's the naming that we're interested in. The first one is labeled as Yokohama, the second is labeled as Kawasaki, and the last one is labeled as Napa. There's also two more similar textures found in the data of Willow Springs, with different brand names. The first one being labeled as Smart Chip Solutions, and the other being labeled as Big O Tires. Some of these could have been used as sponsor stickers that you can put on your car, while others could have been used as track decor. The most interesting one to me is the Kawasaki brand. I don't think Kawasaki has ever been seen in a Need for Speed game. This texture can also be found in the data of Willow Springs, and it's a banner for Carol Monroe. It's not really known why this got cut, because similar banners can be seen from the other drivers and other tracks, so to remove this one seems pretty strange. This texture here is an earlier version of the Super Promotion banner. And lastly, we have a bunch of placeholder advertisement textures, which once again indicates much more brands were supposed to be featured in various tracks. So we have two for Dodge advertisement, which apparently was only supposed to be seen in the Infineon track, Autometer, which apparently was going to be seen on every track, K&N, which actually has a ton of advertisements in the game, but this is the placeholder texture for it, Modified Magazine, which would have been a very nice one to see, Toyo Tires, which did have advertisements in the previous game, which was Need for Speed Carbon. And finally, we have two for Kimonda, which I hope I pronounced properly, and they're a company that supplies Infineon technologies with RAM sticks. Up next are the cutscenes, but sadly, most of them are just simple placeholders. The first one is an earlier version of the ending cutscene.
Oh, how the mighty have fallen! Oh, how the mighty have fallen! Come on, you gotta make some noise, people! Ryan Cooper has come all the way from winning late-night street races to becoming our new showdown king! Oh, yeah! And Rio Watanabe has given up his crown and his car, folks! Ryan Cooper has won it all! Ryan Cooper has become the new showdown king!
This is an even earlier version of it, which is just a simple placeholder. This next one is a simple placeholder for the Super Promotion cutscene, but one interesting thing is, this early cutscene uses audio from a cut Need for Speed PSA, which was actually found in a prototype of Need for Speed Undercover.
I'm Melody. The moves that you and your crew do in this game are meant to stay in the game. In the real world, drive safe, obey the laws of the road, and always wear your seatbelt.
This one is actually left over in every release of the game, but it's unknown if it served any other purpose instead of just being a simple placeholder. This next one can only be found in the files of the Asian release, and this was intended to be a placeholder for the PSA video at the start of the game. However, this game's PSA shares a cutscene with the opening logo. The audio is much longer than the video itself, and you can hear a lot of different car noises in a song that I don't think plays in the final game, which of course indicates this may be audio from an earlier introduction scene. Finally, we have an unused cutscene that's basically a small tutorial for the career mode. It's not really known why this got cut. Even all of the text is still left over in the final game, so it was obviously cut late in development.
Ray Krieger, Nate Denver, Carol Monroe, and Aki Kimura are all masters of their discipline. And then there's Ryo Watanabe. He's the showdown king. The dude is undefeated in every race type there is. If you want to compete, you're gonna have to master all the racing types: drag, drift, grip, and speed. Each mode requires a different car setup, so you have to work on your building and tuning skills. To dominate here, you'll have to bring it all together. You gotta build the fastest cars and master the 4 race types. To get anywhere near the kings, you're gonna have to win, dominate, and break records. Do that, and you'll get invited to the showdowns. Showdowns are the biggest races around. You win all the showdowns, you'll get a shot at Rio. Just remember, there's a gang of other races between you and him, and every one of them wants to wear the crown.
It's time for the sounds and voice lines, and there's a stupid amount of leftover voice lines, over 1,300, so I'll only be adding some of my favorites. Let's start off with the sound effects first, as there's not that many to go through, although a lot of them seem to be leftovers from Need for Speed Carbon. First up, we have a bunch of random sounds from what sounds like an 18-wheeler. We have a few random environment sounds like road noise and honks. We have 2 different siren effects, which are definitely a leftover from Carbon. As well as a helicopter sound, which is probably a leftover from Carbon too. We have 2 sound effects for planes, which are actually leftovers from Underground 2. And finally, we have some generic sounding rain. Onto the voice lines, and the clips you hear are all from Jaybird, as he's the first announcer you come across. But the other 2 announcers, Jared Deanda and John Hindoff, have the exact same cut voice lines, so there's no need to show theirs as well. So we're going to start off with some voice lines about rolling your car.
Somebody totally turtled out there. That car sat up and rolled right over. Oh, man, that is too bad. Too bad. Cooper has dropped a little barrel roll on us out there. He's taking the car right over on the lid. What a complete disaster. Oh, his mechanic is not going to be happy with him today. Oh, yeah, the guy rolled that thing completely over. That car is absolutely finished. Ow, Dr. Cooper performing a little plastic surgery on the roof of his car. He must like the pancake look. Man, that was ugly.
We have a few for the player losing control in a drift race.
Oh, we got a car getting squirrely turn 1. Not a good way to start out. Oh, look at this guy. You've got to hold your line in turn 1, man. Oh, he's lost control. This guy spins out over. Oh, that has gotta hurt. He spins out in the last turn, and this driver is done.
Some for the player getting disqualified in a race.
Well, Cooper's up for a new engine, folks. Cooper's engine is toast. Oh, you can't do that, Cooper. Oh, Ryan Cooper went too soon. Too early, Cooper. Way too early.
We also have a few for getting a second chance after getting disqualified, which I don't think happens in the final game, but correct me if I'm wrong.
He'll need to figure something out. Good thing he gets to go again. He's going to have to make up for blowing that run. He does get another shot, though, coming up. He is so close to making it, he better not screw up this next run. He is not happy at all. He could have taken it right there. He does have one more run, though. That's too bad, too. He looked like he was going to kill it out there. He was looking very good.
And we also have some for the disqualified player winning a race.
Wait, what? No way. Even though he totally blew his last run. Now check this out, folks. Despite the fact he didn't even finish that last run.
Finally, we have a bunch of random voice lines for when the driver wins a race, including some of the bosses.
Bradley Hunter is going to take the win. Frank Book takes it. C-Dub's Craig Wright is gonna be our winner. Vinny Gall bagging it, wrapping it, taking it home in a bag, first place. The Gaster Gavin May slotting the win. Henrik Den, Henrik, my man, he is your winner. Paolo Cruz pedal stomping it right into first place. Carlos Galliano grabbing the big V for victory. Joe Tackett snatching the win. Way to go, Joe. Oh, Takeshi-san, our winner. Way to go, buddy. Ivan Tarkovsky bagging the victory in front of the big crowd. Paul Trask blistering it. Oh, Paul Trask is going to be your winner. Game over. Ryan Cooper taking the win. Way to go, Ryan. Hey, let's hear it for that driver. Man, I hope you were taking some notes on that win. Unbelievable. There it is. This is going to be our winner right here. Let him know about it.
Next, we're going to talk about the unused tracks, and I just want to thank Felipe for his footage. I tried so hard for about 5 to 6 solid hours to get the Asian release of this game working on my PC, and once it did, I couldn't get the maps working anyways. They would either just crash on startup, or the game would completely ignore my config for whatever reason. I even used Zan's map fixer, and it still didn't work. I couldn't get normal mods working either. Modding this game in general is just a huge pain in the ass on PC. And for the PS2 version, the game just wouldn't start when modding it to have the debug menu. I really have no idea what I was doing wrong, and I was honestly losing my mind. But yeah, I highly recommend checking out Felipe's channel. I've been subscribed to him for a little over 10 years now, and the first video I ever saw from him was this one here, posted 13 years ago now. Anyways, it seems Leipzig was semi-planned to release on the PS2 and the Wii versions, as there's an extremely basic layout left over in the game's files. This track was later finished and released with Update 1.1 on PC, Xbox 360, and PS3. Laguna Seca was also in a very early stage in the PS2 and Wii versions. It uses the same placeholder track as Leipzig, just with a lot less brightness. There's also another super early version of Laguna Seca, and it's basically just this texture, which is actually a Google Maps picture of Portland International Raceway from around 2007. Loading this track in-game just displays this texture on a giant flat base. This next one is simply labeled as Test Track, and it seems to be a combination of the previous two tracks, just with an added crane, possibly for scale reference. This massive area you see up here is just a simple flat drivable area. I'm not really sure what the purpose of it was, unless it was to test a car's top speed. Next we have a track called NIS, which stands for Non-Interactable Scene, and I believe this is a map used to test all of the objects used in various backgrounds and cutscenes. You can also see an early version of the Super Promotion banner I was talking about earlier. Up next is a track called LOD Test, and it should be obvious what this track was used for, but in case you don't know, LOD stands for Level of Detail, and this map is a big area where the developers could test the various stages of detail each model has at a certain amount of distance. You can also see some of the placeholder textures I was talking about at the beginning of the video being used here. A track called Lighting is up next, and you should definitely check out the process of fixing this on Felipe's channel. It's very interesting. Anyway, it's probably obvious what this map is used for, but this was obviously used as a lighting test map. It's just a small area used to see how the lighting looked on environmental objects and scenery. Lastly, we have a track called Shudo Expressway, and this is the only track I managed to get footage for. This track is absolutely massive, and it would have been a great area for high-speed racing. The only thing really of note here is the barriers for Need for Speed Carbon. It's unknown if the developers had plans to add these to the final game, or if they were just used here as placeholders. The rest of the track is basically a long strip of road, nothing too crazy. As we come to the end of the video, it's time for the oddities I found throughout the game. First up, there's some unfinished cars still present in the September 16th beta build, and all of these cars were released in various DLC packs later in the game's development. The Bugatti Veyron was pretty much complete, just missing its wheels. The Honda S2000's body is off slightly, but it's actually just using the default wheelbase, which is from the Nissan 240SX. The Seat Leon Cupra is also using this wheelbase, but it's much more noticeable due to the car's body style. Finally, the Mercedes-Benz SL65 AMG was decently unfinished. It's using the default wheelbase, the entire interior of the car was missing, it's missing its headlights and taillights, and its grille is missing from the base car. It seems to appear on a few different body kits though. In Willow Peak, you can find some interesting stuff under the map. Like near the starting line, you can find 4 banners, and one of them even features the unused texture I was talking about earlier. There's also a bigger looking finish line block, and much further out, there's a very strange black smear that honestly looks like a stroke from a paintbrush. I originally thought it was just a flare or like a lens effect, but you can get closer to it, so it's something that's actually placed there and not a screen effect. Within the data of the main menu, this Gretty advertisement can be found. It doesn't seem to be any different than the one seen on various tracks, but it also doesn't make any sense for it to be in the main menu data. Perhaps the main menu was a bit different, and it once used this texture. Which actually leads me into the next oddity. Did you know that the main menu is actually its own map file? Meaning you can actually drive on it and load it like a normal track. This area is obviously very small, but you can see that there's no Gretty advertisement here as well. So like I said, it must have been a part of an earlier main menu design, or simply a placeholder. In Mondello Park, there's a few strange things under the map as well, like this collection of G-Effect props. These seem to spawn here no matter what race day you choose. There's also a strange dev cube under the map that seems to have a shadow on it. My only guess for the purpose of this cube is, it's most likely storing the textures seen on this garage, as it's the exact same texture and the cube is located just under the building. For some reason, in the September beta build, you can find a duplicate Nissan GTR. These first two are labeled as GTR Proto and GTR Proto 2, and they seem to be the exact same, but one of these are used in the final game. And there's another one labeled as Skyliner 35, which is the GTR version seen in the final game. But here you can see it's a bit unfinished. I have no idea why they needed the other one labeled as GTR Proto 2. Perhaps that one was used for testing? There's also two versions of the Porsche 997 GT3 RS. One being labeled as just a 997, but being read as a 997 GT3 RS, and the other one has its full name, and this is the one that they used in the final game. So once again, I have no idea what that other one was used for. Unless it was a placeholder for the non-RS version, that car does exist in this build too, so I really don't know. There's actually two scrap car manufacturers listed in the game files, those being Alfa Romeo and General Motors. However, it's uncertain if these were actually supposed to be implemented or if they're just leftovers from Need for Speed Carbon. I'm leaning more towards they're just leftovers. In this texture sheet, you can see a screenshot of Need for Speed Carbon. It's completely unknown if this was actually supposed to be seen somewhere in the final game, but this whole texture sheet is actually used in an LOD test map I showed off a little earlier. On rare occasions, the rims can fail to load properly on the car featured on the main menu, resulting in wheels reminiscent of the Null car from the Forza series. Lastly, the Ford Mustang GT that spawns in the main menu got a slight change at some point in development. In the September beta build, you can still find the old version of the car with the debug menu, and it seems the only thing that was changed was the body kit. And that's all I have for Need for Speed ProStreet. It's been quite some time since I posted a Need for Speed video, so I feel like this one was needed. I was actually quite surprised at the amount of stuff left over, and the number of cut voice lines is just ridiculous. I do plan to do more Need for Speeds, but due to them being racing games, there's usually not a lot left over, or the main thing left over is cars. Please let me know in the comments if you still like to see some Need for Speeds, even if they're short and don't have a lot of content, because I'm a disgustingly huge fan of Need for Speed, and I have a lot of fun making these videos. Anyways, if you have a suggestion for the next What Was Cut episode, please feel free to comment down below. With that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.